Hi, and welcome to the second part of our tutorial Firebase with Android app to complete a complete app using Firebase at the backend with all the necessary configuration and coding of our app. So in the first part of our tutorial, we stopped in the moment that we finally connected the necessary properties here in Gradle to work with authentication system of Firebase. And you can see this is the connection to there. And by the way, as you can also see, it's telling us there is a newer version, which is the 19.2.0. Why did he put the 16 here instead of the 19? Very simple, because the service that Android Studio gives us here is not the newest one. Sometimes it happens. You can always change it by hand, and if you do that, it will stop showing. Sorry, it's 2.0. It will stop showing that that warning. It's just a warning. It will work anyways, okay? So you shouldn't worry. But you also have to be always updated to what changes are happening in there, because it can later on affect the functionality of our app in different phones. Okay, it's very important to keep an eye on the Gradle file as well. Okay, so great. As you can see, step 3, 4, and 5 until 7, I think, no, until 6, which are the ones that we have to really have to do completely with development, okay? And because it has to do with coding, we will now turn our eyes into the tutorial on the web, okay? Let's sync it on the web, which is here, okay? Here. So first of all, if I want to add, if I want to add, let's start by designing our visual side, so it shows like a login password and an email password for login view. Okay, it can be extremely simple. I'm not going to enter into design. You can do it by yourself, but the only thing really we need to do is to add an email edit text here. Okay, let's put it there. A password edit text under it, and a button, 2 buttons. Okay, one that's going to be for login. Here, for example, let's put it here. Sorry. Here, and another for sign up. Okay, with the sign up service, we're gonna do it later. Right now, we just are designing. Okay, if you want to see it bigger, because it's very small, I'm gonna try to get it a bit closer there. Okay, so remember, constraining. We have to add a certain point of constraint. For example, I'm gonna force the view to be at the 174 distance from here, and I'm going to add it to be also I'm gonna make it static in that position. I'm gonna add this again to be 69 from there. You can always change it. I mean, it depends on what you like to put or not, or whatever. I don't care. Okay, you can see even that sadly it's not exactly the same position. We can always move it a bit, but well, doesn't matter. And the buttons, again, we're going to force it to be dependable on the element above and on the right, down, on the here, and the same here. Okay, we're gonna force it. It's very simple. I'm not gonna enter into constraints development. Okay, we can test it to see if it shows something like this. We can add a title. You can add whatever you want. What I will do is add a hint saying that you have to write here your email. Okay, and here you have to write your password. Great. So once we have that, which is only, as I mentioned before, I'm gonna stop in this kind in designing. It will show the ones that the changes I just made. It's not gonna show, but it will show this and this here. As you can see, it shows the keyboard, and you can enter, and you have the button. And let's put here. I forgot to put, like, later on we'll have to change the ID here. But let's put the text going login, and a text here showing password. Sign up. Sign up. Great. And let's not forget to change the ID. Okay, we need to add ID. Remember that the ID is the name of the object, so that we're going to use to access from the coding side. Okay, from here we have to access to the elements here, the visual elements here. So we have to give them names. We can use the default names, but to make it more intuitive, we're going to add here ET, which stands for edit text, and the name, specific name, which is email. Okay, and yes, we always put yes here. And again, ET and password, again, always. Login, we're going to write it to be btn login, button login, yes, and btn sign up, again, yes. So why I'm doing all this? Because if once I give them names, I can go back here into my code and start accessing, as we've seen in the previous tutorials, the visual elements. Let's say if I write at email, it will offer me, suggest me, you want to use et email from the activity main XML for activity, and I write yes, I want to use it. So it will import a synthetic system so it can access the visual elements. And from now on, I can always put a dot and check out the different elements I can modify visually from here. Okay, it's very important because later on I will need to access the text that email has and the text that password has, so I can confirm it against the Firebase system. Okay, great. So first thing we have to do, we're going to add an on-click function so we can detect when the user presses on login. It's very important for me to know. When the user presses on login, something has to be executed. That something is the name of the function I'm going to define right now. Okay, so let's say function on click login. Always we have to add the variable vview, because if not, it's not going to recognize it. And remember, when you see a red class, because the name of the class, we just press Control space and we press enter, and it's going to import it up here. Okay, great. So once we define this, the name of the function we want the app to execute when the user presses, we go back here, we press on login, yeah, and we go on the on-click, property, which is down here, and we can either write it or just press on the arrow here. It will already suggest us that it detects already a function that is a potential function to execute this action. Okay, so we press on this and we press enter. All this we've seen in the previous tutorials. So from now on, each time the user presses on the login button, it will execute anything that is inside these brackets from here to here. Okay, great. What we wanted to do when we press the login? Well, we first want to store the data that the email has in a variable. We want to store the data that the password has in a variable as well. So let's call it val, because it's a value, not variable. Email text equals to et email, which is the edit text email, dot text dot to string. Okay, so what we're doing is taking the data, taking the text we have here, this text here, we are storing it here. It's very important to understand it. Once we press, let's take it out. Once we press here, it will go first here and take the information from here. Next, we have to do the same thing with password. Okay, instead of et email, it's going to be et password. Okay, and now we have in our hands the two values, both the text in the email and the text in the password. Let's call it password text. We have it in our hands, so we can use it wherever we want. Okay, so now it's the time to go to the Firebase tutorial, go here to authentication, go to Android, and go to password authentication, because that's the one we are right now developing. Okay, If we go here, they already give us and tell us, okay, before you begin, you have to do this, import the 19.2. You see, that's much more updated. And that's the first steps. The second steps, okay, create a password-based account. First, in your sign up activities on create method, remember, in your sign up activities on create method, so we go to the on create method, which is this one here, okay, is telling us to get the shared instance of the Firebase auth object, which means add this thing here. If we do not understand enough what's happening, remember you have to put Kotlin. If we do not really understand everything, we can always open the file, the complete example, in a separate window and check out what the other people already did. You see? This is a complete example. Instead of calling it main activity, they call it email password activity. And as you can see, you have the onCreate, which is exactly the same as ours here. The only difference is that they already have a lot of code in it, okay? You will see that it defined this element here, which is what they're asking us. They're asking us to add this, okay? So it tells us, okay, add this line, but where should I add it? So I go here and check out line 26, which is above the onCreate method, inside the class. So I go here and I just pass this, okay? So I first have this line, which what it's doing is defining a variable called out, just as we define here a value. Yeah, by the way, I just forgot here to add the string, for example. It's not necessary, but you can add it so we know what is the type. So here it defined a private late initial. This is just, you can also take this out, it's not so important, okay, but you can add and just leave it like that. Variable auth, okay, authentication of type Firebase auth. Obviously, as you can see, it's called late init because it said that's going to later on be initialized, which means that right now the variable is null, has no value at all. The following step here in the tutorial is telling us that we have to give it a value. As you can see, by saying auth equals something, in this case equals the instance of this class here, we're telling it that it has a value. We're giving it a value. And where should we put this? Well, we go here and we search where. As you can see, it's right here. So we're going to copy this. And again, we'll add it inside the onCreate. As you can see, it's inside the onCreate. We just have to see where. It's inside the onCreate. Great. Perfect. So now